What are the ancient weapons? What are these three mysterious entities that were said to exist during the Void Century? Or rather, who are the ancient weapons? And most importantly of all, what is the purpose of said three ancient weapons? Well, my belief is that the weapons existed for a far bigger purpose than to simply wage war. My belief is that the three ancient weapons existed and were led by Joy Boy for one single purpose: to bring the dawn of the world. This was Joy Boy and his allies' ultimate objective: to bring the dawn of the world. To dawn in a new era where all could be free, where all the races of the world could be equal and stand side by side under the same sun. This concept of the dawn of the world, of changing the structure of the world, came to be known as the day the world would be turned upside down. Because it would not only turn the current corrupt system upside down, but quite literally the entire world. After all, if the world is steeped deep into the night, then turning it upside down brings the dawn. This is a term that was used by Whitebeard during his final words, claiming that when the One Piece would be found, the world would be turned upside down. The same term was also used between Toki and Oden, revealing to us that the reason why Toki leapt into the future was to see a day where the world would be turned upside down. Even Roger, when he first set out to sea and first met Rayleigh, exclaimed the same thing: that he wanted to turn the world upside down. This is why Pedro named his pirate crew the Nox Pirates, the Latin word for night, because he wanted to be someone who paved the way for the dawn. Similarly, Kolsky is the Japanese word for moonlight, because the Kolsky clan would help one day pave the path for the dawn of the world. Just like Toki stated in her prophecy, "O you moon unaware of the dawn, if your wish is to come true, then cast 9 shadows on the moonlit night, woven of 20 years, and you shall know the brilliance of the dawn." Someone like Orochi had interpreted this chant to be aimed at him, but it is revealed in the flashback that the one Toki was addressing is implied to be Oden himself, since she talks to him as she chants her final words. Oden represents the moon unaware of the dawn because he could not achieve it himself. But as long as he cast his own light on 9 shadows, his 9 red scabbards, those 9 individuals could open a path to the dawn in his place. And it's fitting that the opening of Wano would serve as one of the first steps to lead to the dawn of the world, because Wano is based on Japan, the land of the rising sun, the land of the dawn, something that we are told again and again. And the hints don't stop there. Why do you think it is that the ship of the Straw Hat Pirates is called the Thousand Sunny, with the shining sun as its figurehead? Why do you think that their captain and many other influential figures, including the previous Pirate King himself, were all born in the east, the place where the sun rises, on an island called Dawn Island? And of course, there's also all the foreshadowing set up with the symbols of the sun, or the themes of the sun we've seen across Fishman Island and so many arcs in the rest of the series. Pedro might have been the first to properly explain this concept, but it's always been there. It's always been foreshadowed and set up across the entire series, ever since the very start. Even the iconic sound effect, Dawn, that Oda loves to put in so many pages, could be considered foreshadowing of this, because it's the same reading as Dawn. And in fact, one of the biggest forms of foreshadowing, believe it or not, is in the form of anime openings. Yes, the actual anime openings, because these have held the biggest spoilers in the Star series by foreshadowing certain events in their lyrics, something that almost no one ever noticed. After all, when it comes to making songs for anime openings for any series, the anime and manga staff often give directives and words and concepts that should be mentioned in the lyrics, and through that, Oda managed to sneakily hide many references to future events in the series by just asking the singers to feature specific words. Specifically, the word dawn, and any mentions of the night before it, the sun, its light, and the tomorrow to come. For example, opening 1 mentions "send that annoying night flying away." In opening 2, they say, "The back of this dream I chase is unlike that of any other." I chase and chase after it with a burning feeling that awakens the dawn. We aim for the shining light. That shine of ours is a sun that will never set. With the sun always in our hearts, and with the power to connect together, I must keep running so I can grab hold of tomorrow. The clouds float in the cobalt blue, soaked in the road to the tomorrow that was lost. But all you need to do is laugh before the twilight. I believe. Let's go to the one tomorrow. Before the dawn breaks the night, let's set off. Let's go pick up the tomorrow we haven't seen yet. The sun rises, illuminating all of our sorrows equally. I believe in it, the future that will unite us all in one piece. I can't stand still, I can't stop. The dawn hasn't come yet and I'm getting impatient. Let's raise the flag. The sun in our hearts will never set. I can't wait for the morning, it's too frustrating, so how about we take the sun ourselves and drag it up to the sky? When tough times come, just laugh. If you want to look for a new tomorrow, be more confident in yourself. As we gather all the treasures, let's give a big laugh. Use it all up in a crazy noisy party and spray it all out. Sure, some of these might be coincidences, but there's no way all of these are. There's no way that all of these mentions of dawn aren't intentional. And this is not accounting for all the times the dawn is visually depicted in the openings and endings directly. It's been there in front of our own eyes this whole time. It's the goal we've been chasing after this entire series, yet most readers have never realized this. Ever since the very start, the dawn has been our ultimate goal. But back to our story. While we've seen that many share Joy Boy's ideals of equality, not all felt the same way. Because those in power felt threatened. They realized just how dangerous Joy Boy had become, that the power and privilege they held could be ripped right away from their hands. They'd be dragged down from their perches and lose the monopoly they so desperately craved. Even in the present, we can very visibly see the effects this has left. The descendants of those who once opposed Joy Boy long in the past share those same ideals of monopoly and control, ruling the world from high above, seeing themselves as gods above all other humans and races. Their discrimination towards other races and even other humans who they view as different species, since they see themselves as gods, is arguably worse than any other individual has shown in the series. The story has been written to show just how despicable they are. These individuals are the descendants of the kings of the human countries that possessed the most power back in Joy Boy's day. While not ruling together, they were the ones in power, those who stood at the top of the world and saw themselves as gods. One of these families, the Don Quixote clan, was said by the Tontata to be vicious, greedy and manipulative, embodying the ideal of corruption and control. And it is likely that all the other kings were no different. If Joy Boy had managed to bring the dawn of the world, then that would jeopardize their power. As Clover put it, what they feared was not the Great Kingdom's power, but their ideals. And with how deep that corruption ran, those in power were willing to do anything to put a stop to Joy Boy's dream, which could have robbed them of their privilege. They were so scared by the prospect of the dawn of the world happening that they wanted to ensure Joy Boy would never be able to carry it out. So to achieve that, 20 kings from 20 kingdoms across the world formed an alliance. And thus, the 20 kingdoms, the alliance, declared war on Joy Boy. As it had been the case before, while humans were biologically weaker to a lot of other races, they always retained one advantage: numbers. Their military power proved to be a mighty force, and thus Joy Boy and his allies had no other choice but to fight to survive. Thus started the Great War. This Great War became a conflict on a global scale. On one hand, there was the faction of the Great Kingdom, the Kingdom of Pirates led by Joy Boy, alongside their many allies formed by many of the world's oppressed races. And on the other hand was the allied powers of 20 human kingdoms, wishing to eradicate his ideals. However, to understand the event of this Great War, we need to understand what were the biggest players of this conflict: the three ancient weapons. We haven't talked much about them yet, but the three ancient weapons are one of the most important aspects of the Void Century. But to understand what role the weapons played in the story at large, we need to understand what the three ancient weapons are, which is far from easy. So for starters, let us recap what we know for a fact. The so-called ancient weapons are three, known by the names of Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus. These names are a reference to real-life Greek mythology representing the great trinity of gods. Pluton was the god of the underworld, and as such represented the earth. Poseidon was the god of the seas, and as such represented the sea. And Uranus was the god of the heavens, thus representing the skies. Earth, sea, and sky, below, middle, and above, a trinity that symbolized the three planes. This mythological reference was acknowledged in World in the fact that Crocodile mentioned Pluton was said to have been named after a god, just like in Greek mythology, and later Robin confirmed that all three weapons were named after gods. Pluton is the first of the three weapons to be named, first mentioned by Crocodile in Alabasta. He mentioned having heard of this lead that a weapon was located on the island and that a poneglyph on said island would detail its location. He also claimed that it's a weapon capable of destroying an entire island with one blast. However, while Robin does find out about it, we are not told any more details within that arc. It's only later in Water 7 when Iceberg revealed that the ancient weapon Pluton is actually a battleship that was crafted in Water 7 long ago. The designer of the ship passed down its blueprints across the generations in secret, under the fear that someone could misuse this weapon, or the other two weapons, for evil, making it so that these blueprints could be allowed to create a counter-weapon that should be built if any of the original weapons went on a rampage if someone with evil intentions took hold of them. Though these blueprints were only left behind in case that ever came to happen and were to be destroyed if their existence ever came to light. Iceberg wanted to burn them, but Robin's existence posed the threat that the weapons would be able to be reborn, so he held off from doing so. However, Frankie, deciding to believe in the Straw Hats being able to protect Robin and not misuse the weapons, something that would come to pass, decided to burn the blueprints, forcing the world to rely on the already existing weapons. However, it's strongly implied that the original Pluton is still around, and the most confusing thing is that, like Crocodile said, it's supposed to be in Alabasta. Admittedly, maybe his lead was wrong and only the poneglyph was there, but even Robin referred to Pluton as the Pluton of Alabasta, and this is with knowledge of its location. And this would make a lot of sense because, well, yes, Alabasta was one of the 20 kingdoms that formed the Allied Powers, which later became the world government. At the same time, Alabasta also seems to have opposed the Allied Powers at some point. Not only did they refuse, or perhaps were not allowed, to join the other 19 kings and Marie-Joie, but they also hid a poneglyph in their country. But most importantly, they also bear the symbol of the sun in their flag, the symbol of Joy Boy's allies. This indicates that one of two things happened. Either one, at first they were Joy Boy's allies, but ended up betraying him and siding with the other 19 kingdoms, taking the poneglyph not to guard it, but to hide it from the world. This would explain why Robin laughed at the prospect of Cobra saying they were protecting that poneglyph. Or, on the other hand, maybe they were originally part of the 20 kingdoms and fought as part of the Allied Powers, but by the end of the war they came to realize their mistakes and regretted their choices, which is why they refused to ascend to Marie-Joie, because they did not want to become as corrupt as the other celestial dragons, offering to protect one of the poneglyphs as repentance for their actions. It's hard to determine which of the two was what actually happened, but at the very least it is very evident that the Kingdom of Alabasta was affiliated both with the Allied Powers and with the Great Kingdom at one point or another, so this kingdom having ties with Pluton directly is not that far-fetched. Regardless, for now let's focus on the other weapons we know about. Poseidon. It has been confirmed that Poseidon is the name given to a mermaid princess who inherits the power to lead the colossal creatures known as the Sea Kings. An ancient legend of the Ryugu Kingdom's royal family says that every several hundred years, Poseidon manifests itself in the form of a mermaid princess. It is unclear how this power transmits down, but the Sea Kings refer to it being the form of their king, the king of all Sea Kings. This indicates that this isn't so much a magical power that allows the mermaid princess to control Sea Kings like puppets, but rather that the mermaid princess inherits or embodies the spirit of Poseidon, the god of the Sea Kings, and as such the Sea Kings follow the orders of their ruler. Like they told Shirahoshi, to them she was always their king, because the Sea Kings follow Poseidon, their ruler. If Pluton was said to be named after a god, then it perhaps is possible that Poseidon was also named after a god, quite literally. This king of the Sea Kings could perhaps be their god, not necessarily an almighty creature, but at least the one that they view as their ruler, the one they follow. So in that regard, Poseidon could be the mortal form of this god. It isn't clear exactly how this works and what this type of god really is, and sadly, we simply lack enough information to really determine what this god is, how this power came to be, so we will not be answering that in this project. But at the very least, that doesn't really matter to us, because we know that this power exists, and that is what is important. But what if this is applied to all three weapons? Like Robin said, all three weapons were named after gods, something even Crocodile confirmed for the Pluton of Alabasta. So what I am thinking is, what if these three weapons were all the same thing? What if they all three were actually people? The term reborn has always been used in regards to the three weapons. It was said that Robin could help these weapons be reborn through her knowledge. What if this is not meant symbolically, but literally? Just like how Poseidon was reborn in the form of Shirahoshi, what if all three weapons have been reborn? What if these three weapons are simply the incarnate forms of three godlike deities that some races follow: Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus? Because we've already seen someone who is identical to Poseidon, someone that, just like Shirahoshi, has been able to command a colossal creature that acknowledges them as their master.
Stop!
We've seen very clearly how Momonosuke ordered Zunisha around. Just like the Sea Kings, Zunisha is a colossal creature that, despite its animalistic appearance, possesses the intelligence and language of people. Zunisha even has the kanji reading for Elephant Lord, which is quite similarly written to the kanji for Sea King, further showing how similar these creatures are. Yet what is most telling is the form in which both Shirahoshi and Momonosuke were able to talk to these creatures, being through the voice of all things, something that was confirmed in the Vivrakar databook. This ability has been mentioned a few times across the series, a mysterious ability that certain individuals have, which according to the databook is implied to potentially be an advanced form of observation haki. Something that allows to listen to the voices of the poneglyphs and certain creatures such as the Sea Kings or Zunisha. Though the only ones who are acknowledged by these creatures are Shirahoshi and Momonosuke, since they are the only two these species will acknowledge as their leaders, as their kings. Since Shirahoshi is acknowledged to be Poseidon, the leader of the Sea Kings, then what difference is there with Momonosuke? What if Momonosuke is the incarnation of Uranus? This is something that is further motivated by the fact that Zunisha is a colossal creature that goes high into the sky, deep into the clouds. The Vivrakar databook even mentioned how Zunisha reaches as high as the Sky Islands, with one of its favorite foods being apples from said Sky Islands. In that regard, it perfectly embodies that symbol of the sky, because it is a threat that descends from the heavens onto the seas below. It does, however, seem odd that Momonosuke can only lead one elephant, while Shirahoshi can lead potentially hundreds of Sea Kings. But what if there once were more of them? What if there used to be many elephant lords like Zunisha, but most of them ended up disappearing? Could that perhaps have to do with the crime that Zunisha committed? Zunisha once committed a grave crime, perhaps a mistake that resulted in the extinction of a lot of members of its species, and so Uranus condemned it to walk and protect the road poneglyph on its back as repentance. Furthermore, what if Uranus allowed the Minks to live on the back of Zunisha, giving them a home where they could stay away from humans, which is why in turn the Minks vote to form a pact of brotherhood with the Kosuke clan and offer to come to their aid if they ever needed it. There is another specimen of Zunisha species that we could have potentially seen though, and that is the entity of the Florian Triangle. This is a colossal creature similar in height to Zunisha. We only saw 3 large pillar-like shapes and a face, but these 3 pillars could be the 3 legs of an elephant, the 4th one out of sight. And the face does have the shape of 2 tusks coming out of the front, meaning it could be an elephant. Plus, Zunisha is said to always be covered in mist, as is this colossal creature in the Florian Triangle. This creature is considered to be responsible for sinking many ships. So what if, perhaps, it is still following its duty that Uranus gave it long ago to face off against any enemy ships that arrived? Thinking that way, it starts to make a lot of sense, but unfortunately this whole theory simply doesn't add up much because, as we mentioned, Pluton is a battleship. Iceberg made it very clear, and assuming it is the same Pluton Crocodile talked about, which makes sense since he did describe it that it could destroy an entire island with a single blast, then that rules out the idea that all three weapons were people. I did present the idea that maybe someone like Nefertari Vivi could be Pluton, as I mentioned in my fan manga Return to the Reverie, but that would only be if Iceberg was wrong and the blueprints were only meant as a counterweapon, not the original weapon. And as his and Crocodile's dialogue seems to suggest, the original Pluton seems like it was indeed a battleship. But it's still possible that Poseidon and Uranus were people and were the two original weapons, but Pluton simply was a ship. Or who knows, maybe Momonosuke does possess the exact same power that Shirahoshi has, but he simply isn't considered and labeled a weapon because he can only control one creature. Maybe Uranus is something else entirely that we simply don't have enough information to know about yet. Hell, who knows, maybe something like Whitebeard's Gura Gura no Mi is an ancient weapon because it was said that it can destroy the world, an attribute that has been given to all the other weapons, which might be why Blackbeard got his hands on it. Or maybe not. Honestly, there are so many options that we can't say for sure what all the ancient weapons are. But that doesn't matter, because in the end it doesn't matter what the three weapons are. It doesn't matter if Pluton is Vivi or is a ship. It doesn't matter if Uranus is Momo or something else. To our grander theory, it doesn't matter where the weapons came from. Like I said, we don't even know why Shirahoshi incarnated as Poseidon, but what matters to us is why the weapons exist, and more specifically, what their purpose is. Because it's that thing we just mentioned that is the key to understanding the role of the weapons. It's as Iceberg himself put it, the weapons will only serve one role: to bring the destruction of the world. This is the same thing that Roshinante mentioned to Law when speaking about the D clan, claiming that the ultimate objective of the D is to bring the destruction of the world. However, Roshinante explained that this distraction for the people of the D holds a very different meaning to that of havoc and eradication. And we've been told this time and time again that in the wrong hands, the weapons could destroy the world and sink it into darkness. It's the reason why Roshinante wanted to keep Law away from Doflamingo. If someone like him, or someone like Spandam, someone like Kaido and Big Mom, or someone like Blackbeard got their hands on the weapons, it could, quite literally, sink the world into darkness. But at the same time, if used in the right hands, then the weapons could be used for love, to bring a good change in the world. And Otohime mentioned that according to legend, one day a man, implicitly Joy Boy, would appear and guide Shirahoshi to using her power the right way. So while there are those that could use the weapons for evil and bring legitimate destruction to the world, there is also someone, a new Joy Boy, who could help destroy the world in a different way, a destruction that would lead to a brighter tomorrow. As a wise man once said, geography is everything, and it couldn't be more right. Dividing and segregating the world, separating it into many different pieces, keeping people divided, it makes it easier to keep them under control. For people to truly be free, Joy Boy would have to bring down these barriers and connect the world together in one piece. And so the ancient weapons exist exactly for that purpose: to destroy the Red Line and the Grand Line, to bring the destruction of the world. The Red Line and the Grand Line stand as the greatest obstacles to Joy Boy's dream, quite literally, and it's taking them down that is necessary to achieve this dream. We don't know how the Red Line and the Grand Line came to be, but I don't think that their creation is a natural phenomenon. After all, a ring of land thousands of meters in height that perfectly surrounds the entire world in half? A current in the form of a straight line perfectly perpendicular and with two bells on the sides where there are no currents? They're both too specifically built to be natural. Even Nami explained that the Red Line is in fact not a real continent, but a series of different islands, all with different weather types fused together. And Oda mentioned in the SBS that Pangaea Castle's name might hold some importance in symbolic meaning to a grander mystery, given how it's named after the real-life Pangaea supercontinent, which was formed by different islands all coming and fusing together, just like the Red Line. But what if these two structures were not built by nature, but by someone? And in particular, when it comes to the Grand Line, we might even be able to tell who it was that created it. Poseidon. Because what is the main habitat in the whole wide world where the Sea Kings live in? On one hand, Fishman Island, and on the other, the Calm Belts. The Sea Kings guard the Grand Line from anyone who tries to enter it, sinking any ships that try to pass through. This is the exact same thing as Fishman Island, where many Sea Kings surround the area, making the journey to or from the island very dangerous. And yet, the island itself is never attacked. As Neptune pointed out, the Sea Kings would never attack the island because that's what they've been ordered to do. What if the Sea Kings stayed vigilant at the Calm Belts and Fishman Island as an order given by Poseidon? After all, many of the kingdom's allies, the Alabasta Kingdom, the Shandians, the Kuja, the Giants, the Dwarves, and of course the Fishmen themselves, not to mention the island where the Great Kingdom itself was located at the end of this ocean, are all located across the Grand Line. What if this was created as a natural barricade, with Poseidon asking the Sea Kings to protect all these islands, something that remained afterwards across the centuries by mistake? The Sea Kings might have been able to alter ocean currents, leading to the formation of the Calm Belts, and by result, the Grand Line, which would make it harder for any opponents to make it to them. And perhaps the Red Line might have been quite similar. Since Pluton is the god of the Earth, did the original Pluton have something to do with it? Did the original Pluton create the Red Line, much like Poseidon made the Grand Line? Or maybe not, if Pluton is a ship. Maybe the Red Line was created by like a devil fruit user or something else, or perhaps some other power, but how they came to be doesn't matter. Because like we said, what matters to us isn't the origin of the Red Line and the Grand Line, but their destruction. So many people tried to achieve this. We know the Giants tried to destroy the Red Line, but were unable to, citing it as the one thing they cannot destroy. And of course, we saw Laboon bashing his head for years in an attempt to destroy it too. Sure, this was fueled by a personal reason, but perhaps it shows an innate desire to destroy the Red Line by the whales, something that is supported by the fact that other members of his species also bear the same scars on their heads, indicating that they too attempted to destroy the Red Line through their headbutts. And as the Sea Kings put it, on the day that Joy Boy and Poseidon will meet again, the whales will rejoice, because the Red Line will finally be destroyed. Because if Shirahoshi can control the Sea Kings, then she can have them destroy the Grand Line, by undoing the currents, undoing the Calm Belts, and thus undoing the currents of the Grand Line. And in turn, Pluton and or Uranus could help destroy the Red Line. Pluton was said to be able to destroy an island with one cannon blast, so what if a barrage of cannon fire can destroy each and every single one of the islands that form the Red Line? Or perhaps Zunisha, with its colossal size, can actually destroy the Red Line and help bring it down. Or maybe it will be the Gura Gura Nami like we talked about before. It doesn't matter in which way it is and what each weapon is, in one way or another, the ancient weapons will help bring forth the destruction of the world, the destruction of the Grand Line and the Red Line. And that is something that will result in the destruction of Fishman Island. If the Red Line is destroyed, that would destroy Fishman Island, which lies below it, just like Charlie mentioned in her prophecy, that a man bearing a straw hat would help bring the destruction of Fishman Island. But this, unlike Charlie perceived it, would not be because of evil intent, but for the sake of helping destroy these barriers. And in the end, it won't matter, because Fishman Island will not be needed anymore. The fishmen will emigrate to the surface under the same sun as humans, which is why the Noah Ark was created, a ship that can only be carried by one of the ancient weapons, Poseidon. And that explains so much. It's why it's been emphasized why the weapons are so important. It's why Otohime said that Shirahoshi could one day change the world, and why she had to be protected until then. It's why Yamato said that Momonosuke had to survive at all costs. Roger said he was too early because Shirahoshi hadn't been born yet, meaning he could not yet bring the destruction of the world himself. and the Sea Kings were waiting for the day that Joy Boy and the Mermaid Princess, their two kings, would meet again. Because without Poseidon, the Grand Line cannot be undone, and without her, the people of Fishman Island cannot emigrate, meaning that Red Line cannot be destroyed as well. But Joy Boy was not able to do this, just like Roger, because potentially Poseidon died during the original war. That is why Joy Boy wrote an apology letter in her name for the people of Fishman Island, apologizing for failing to protect her and thus not being able to bring his objective to help them emigrate to fruition. And more importantly than anything, this would help explain why this 800-year gap was necessary, because Poseidon needed to be reborn. Poseidon is said to be born every several hundred years, but this term is the exact same term used to describe the distance between the void century and the present. So what if Poseidon is only born every 800 years? Which is why Joy Boy and his people had to wait for so long, for 8 centuries, before they could bring forth the destruction of the world. Much like how the people of Wano had to wait 20 years until someone could come and free that country too. The other two weapons could potentially be the same, especially if they turn out to be humans, but even if they aren't, it doesn't matter, because Poseidon alone had to be born for both the destruction of the Grand Line and the destruction of the Red Line to happen, so regardless, that 800-year gap was necessary. So Joy Boy and his people waited. The people of the D waited across the centuries, generation after generation, until one day they could help bring the destruction of the world. Waiting until the weapons could be reborn, and thus help bring down the Grand Line and the Red Line. With Poseidon back, she could destroy the Grand Line and she could carry the Noah, allowing the Red Line to be destroyed too by either Pluton, Uranus, or both. And it's when these two are finally destroyed that finally, from that destruction, a world can be born anew. A world that is truly unified under the same sun, just like Otohime put it, finally ushering in the dawn of the world. By turning the world upside down, quite literally, and putting an end to this long, long night, by letting the dawn rise again, with the sun uniting all species together. The destruction of both the Grand Line and the Red Line will finally lead to a truly unified world. And that isn't just symbolically, but literally. In a world without boundaries, all seas will fuse together as one. Just like Odin said, the seas will split, because this will finally bring all the seas together. The East Blue, the West Blue, the North Blue, and the South Blue, all would fuse together to create...
お前さ、オールブルーって知ってるか？
にゃ。
なんだ、知らねえのかよ。奇跡の海の話さ。その海にはよ、イーストブルー、ウエストブルー、ノースブルー、サウスブルー、この4つの海にいる全種類の魚が住んでるんだ。
The Old Blue likely did exist in the past at some point. The legend must have come from somewhere. But ever since those barriers were created, the Old Blue disappeared and became nothing more than a legend. Something most believed to just be a false myth. A world where there are no boundaries or limitations. One not divided by barriers, but unified as one. A world where everyone can be free. One where everyone could be free, both free from discrimination and with the freedom to adventure anywhere they want. And I think that at its core is the true meaning of the dawn of the world. Because the dawn on one hand represents the union of all races. The day when the sun rises and they can all live under the same sun, without prejudice or discrimination, where everyone is united and connected together in one piece. But at the same time, the dawn of the world represents the point in time when the Red Line and the Grand Line are physically destroyed, physically unifying and connecting the world into the All Blue, into one piece, because that encapsulates the core meaning of freedom, to be able to sail anywhere in the world. In other words, to give everyone the right of adventure. And that is exactly what Joy Boy, what the D-Clan sought after for so long. Their ultimate objective, the destruction of the world, turning the world upside down, to bring the world to its dawn. Or, as it is known by its true name, the dawn of adventure. The Romance Dawn. But destroying the world and bringing the dawn would not be enough to fully connect all those who had been divided for centuries. The world itself is not the treasure Joy Boy left behind. After the world will be destroyed, someone will need to connect all its people together. So in order that someone could one day achieve that, Joy Boy left behind a special gift. Something that this person could use one day to connect the world together under the same sun. The One Piece. But that is a story no one yet knows about.